Hey everyone, welcome back to my next video. This is an update for my 30-day skull drawing challenge. So it's currently day 7. I'm 1 week into it, roughly about quarter of the way through. I've been working from mainly the Proco skull and then working in ballpoint pen in my A4 sketchbook. So we'll take a look at that in a second and we'll talk about how I've been studying and what I need to work on more next and generally just my thoughts on the process. So let's take a look at my sketchbook. So, a really quick recap. This is where we were up to in the last video. These quite poor attempts of drawing the skull were me working without reference before I started the challenge. So we won't go too much into this because you can watch last week's video on that. The front view wasn't too bad. These views were pretty bad. You can tell my lack of proportions and knowledge of anatomy. The teeth, for example, need to come further back. The perspective and everything is off. There's all sorts wrong with these. Okay, so I wasn't 100% sure how to start with this. Obviously I'm going to be drawing lots of skulls, but I thought to begin with I would actually work on specific features and proportions, just so that when it comes to working from reference of full skulls I've got some guidance or something to bear in mind. So you can see I've actually started specifically with eyes. I can never get the eye shape right, so I spent a little time studying on that. The writing and the notes are not really very important, especially for you guys to see. It was more of a way to solidify it in my mind. I find that if I draw something, draw it again, make notes, it sticks in my mind a little bit better. So we've got 7 days to go through. This is day 1. You can see I started by actually breaking the eye down into a basic shape. So hopefully you can see this quite well on camera. Almost just like a square, but with an extra angle on it. And I was doing my best to try and notice specific things about this. So for example, this higher angle, this sharper angle, is about 2/3 of the way up from a front view. So I was working from the Proco skull for the most part, and you can hopefully see from this view what I was referring to about the angle. I also noticed that the eyes sort of droop down as they go outwards, and they're quite curved and smaller at this side compared to the inner side. Now I won't go through every note like that. You can see that I still made plenty of mistakes. For example, down here, whilst I had the shape right, I was drawing them way too rectangular, so I had to work on making them slightly more boxy as I went along, and then just some doodles from different angles. And I did introduce a little bit of the cheekbone, but yeah, I didn't really know where to start, to be honest. It's maybe not the best way of going about it. I figured for day 2, I'll start by actually drawing a skull, and with this one, I actually spent a while measuring it out, trying to get more accurate proportions, and to be honest, it's terrible. It's one of the ugliest skulls I've seen. I mean, looking at it now, I can see that the mouth, for example, is too low and various other things. Plus, it's just generally an ugly skull. But at least I gave it a go. There are going to be some messy drawings throughout this. And then I decided to work on the eye again, but from a side view of various angles. Because after day 1, I was a bit worried that I'd focused too much on just the front view. And by the end of this, I want to be able to draw side, front, and 3/4. I started introducing the cheekbone and a few various surrounding structures. So the things I was looking at more than anything, or trying to pick up on, were like the angle of the cheekbone relative to the eye from the side view. So let me show you that. It's quite a sharp angle. And then I finished off the day just by drawing some skulls from reference. So this one isn't the Proco skull. You can tell it looks slightly different. I am a little bit worried when working from online reference that I might be picking up some bad habits that are maybe not meant to be on the skull, depending on who's made the skull. And notes about what was good and what was wrong. You probably can't read my writing anyway. In fact, I carried this over and did a little bit more on teeth because there's not actually much in terms of illustration here. This was more, again, solidifying some notes about the teeth, the shapes of them, how many teeth there are, things like that most people probably already know, but things that would help me when it comes to not using reference. Day 3, I didn't have anything in mind to work on, so I just straight away picked up the skull, the jaw fell off, and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to draw this from a few different angles, because I think this is going to be one of the more challenging aspects for me. I actually thought they turned out pretty good, but for me, I need to focus more on learning in comparison with drawing a nice illustration at this stage. And then after a few jaw studies, I took the skull and I just opened the mouth to work from reference. So there he is with my pen lid, keeping it open. And then a few random studies just from different angles. Carrying on with day 3, just more different angles again. I think I used the Proco skull for most of these. Some of them turned out pretty good. and then some of them just didn't work. You'll see, like on this one, this is day 4. Some angles were quite difficult. I don't really know if I need these, but I decided I'd give them a go. So these 2 were pretty cool, and this one from below, maybe not necessary, but I figured I'd do it anyway. Whereas this one, the perspective was really difficult and it was just horrible. I also went back and did some basic front and side view. The side view still looks very off for me, but at least it's a starting point of knowing what to work on. So on to day 5, I noticed that one of the skulls I was looking at, the highest point was around here, and the next point down was the cheekbones and then to the jaw. So I noticed this kind of shape coming in. You can see I've sort of drawn it there. So I wanted to draw that and make notes of it to, again, make that stick in my brain a little bit. This 3/4 angle was pretty bad in terms of the mouth. I really had a lot of trouble with that, so I focused on that specifically to get the angle correct and show the overlap of the teeth. Again, focusing more on the teeth, looking at the shading, and I don't really know what you call these, but the shape above the teeth, these sort of indents where I guess the tooth goes into the skull, the maxilla, I find those quite difficult to actually render. So you probably noticed in a lot of my drawings it ends up just looking like a mustache. So that was something I wanted to work on. And then again, just some more skulls from reference. I can't remember if these were from the Proco skull or whether these were from Pinterest. Some turned out okay, some did not. But here we go anyway. So day 6, this is far too long and I can tell that now. But I did have a tendency to make my skulls too wide. So in some ways this was improvement. I was looking at a different way to look at the proportions on this. So I noticed that pretty much halfway along the skull from the front view again, you had the center of the eye sockets. So it's just a different method. Again, this is where I started to realize that I was doing the eyes too rectangular. So I started making them more boxier and square. I've always known that the side view fits into a square quite well. So I started doing that and using measurements. I think I actually took a photo of the Proco skull and cut it into quarters, and then quarters again in this area, because I thought that might help me when it comes to day 30 working without reference. Some smaller stuff, just talking about how the teeth overlap and come forward a little bit. And then last of all, day 7, this is where I'm up to at this point. Again, practicing these side views just to solidify them again. This one was with reference, I think one of them was without. I'm still not 100% convinced on the side view. And then just working from some references on Google and Pinterest. These ones didn't have bottom jaws, but I kind of liked them. And then here you can see the same again. I've just literally finished some of these. This one's actually my favorite, and I've decided not to render it just because I don't really need to. It's more about learning these shapes. If I can get anything like these without reference, I'll be extremely happy. So that's where I am up to. I can see loads of areas that need massive improvements. And again, whilst I'm happy with some of these, they are working from reference for the most part. So by the end of the challenge, when I take the reference away, obviously I'm not expecting it to look as good as that. So I've been working, as mentioned earlier, in ballpoint pen, Bics and paper mates. Not really my usual medium, I'm more of a digital artist to be honest. I'm trying now, as you can see here, to actually work a little bit more on 3/4 angle. So my closing thoughts for this video are, it's actually a lot more difficult than I expected. Fitting it in is definitely difficult on busy days as well. But that's it, so I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, smash that thumbs up button, and of course leave me a comment below. If you subscribe to the channel, that helps me out a lot, and also you can stay up to date with the rest of the challenge. And that is it, so thank you so much for watching, guys.